order. Let the record reflect it's Thursday, April 15, 2021 at 7 p.m. This is Chairman Garrett Gray speaking. At this time, I ask that anyone joining us remotely to please mute your phones. Thank you. For those wishing to follow along with the PowerPoint, you are encouraged to access the meeting through Tinley Park Television, streaming live right now on YouTube. It is my understanding that all members and staff present have checked in on the conference line and we can begin our meeting. Please note, throughout the meeting, we expect to have other individuals joining us via phone call pertaining to specific agenda items. Thanks in advance for your patience and cooperation throughout tonight's Plan Commission meeting, which is convening remotely via conference call. This open meeting of the Village of Tinley Park is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Pritzker's Executive Order 2020-07 issued on March 16, 2020, which suspends the Open Meetings Act provisions relating to in-person attendance by members of a public body. The Open Meetings Act, OMA, requires public bodies to allow for public comment. Therefore, this meeting will include public comment via the established protocol. Even if members of the public do not provide comment, participants are advised that people may be listening who do not provide comment, and those persons are not required to identify themselves. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by web or audio conference. We're getting used to working and meeting remotely, so let's just go over some of the protocols. Please remember to wait until I address you before you speak. And when you do speak, please identify yourself first. And when not speaking, please keep your phones muted. At this time, I'll ask the Commission Secretary to please call the roll.
Commissioner Vick.
Here.
Commissioner Manny.
Here.
Commissioner Gatto.
Here.
Commissioner West. Commissioner Gaskell.
Here.
Commissioner Aitchison.
Here.
Commissioner Lascuto.
Present.
Chairman Gray.
Here. Okay. We have a quorum. This is Chairman Gray. Staff, are there any communications for the Commission?
No, sir. This is Paula.
Okay. Chairman Gray, let us now begin with the approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 1st, 2021 Plan Commission meeting?
This is Commissioner Vick. I make a motion.
This is Commissioner Manny. I second that motion.
This is Chairman Gray. Motion made by Commissioner Vick, seconded by Commissioner Manny. I will ask for a voice vote. Are there any opposed to this motion? Hearing none, the motion is carried. We'll move on to item 1, which is the first and only item this evening, which is a public hearing to consider approving a rezoning upon annexation of property located at 6864 179th Street to the R-6, the medium density residential district, and a rezoning of property located at 6900 179th Street from R-1, the single family residential district, to the R-6 zoning district. Approval of the architecture / site plan and annexation / final plat of subdivision, along with a variation to allow rear yard setbacks from the north property line ranging from 13.59 feet to 15.12 feet, when the required setback is 30 feet, will also be considered. May I have a motion to open the public hearing?
This is Commissioner Gatto, so moved.
This is Commissioner Lascuto. I second that motion.
This is Chairman Gray. Motion made by Commissioner Gatto, seconded by Commissioner Lascuto. I will ask for a voice vote. Are there any opposed to this motion? Hearing none, the motion is carried. This is Chairman Gray, I do have confirmation that the notice of public hearing has been published in the newspaper. staff please proceed with your presentation? And before we go further, anyone wishing to speak on this matter will be sworn in before they speak, but after the staff's presentation. So, staff, proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. This is Paula. Prior to making my presentation, I want to make sure that everyone is aware that the staff report that was produced has been distributed to all the commissioner members and is posted on our website. The staff report is going to be attached to the minutes of this meeting and then made part of the meeting record. So as the chairman mentioned, we have 5 issues under review this evening. We did have a workshop 2 weeks ago, and I understand there is public in the room as well as the petitioner, so I'll make sure that some of this may be repetitive to some of the commissioners, but I think it's important for those residents that are there that they get the full breadth of the report. So we do have a rezoning this evening. One parcel is going to need to be annexed. The other one's already in the village. We're going to do a site plan and an architecture review. We have a variation of the north setback, which I'll discuss later. Functions of the side yard, but by ordinance it's a rear yard. And then we have a subdivision review. So let's first make sure, let's go to the next slide. Let's make sure we all know where this is located. On 179th Street, the area there with a star is the location of the property. If we go to the next parcel, what this helps explain, you'll see parcel 1 and 2. Those are the 2 parcels that need to be annexed and rezoned. And then to the west of that, you have parcel number 3. The property immediately west of that is a single-family home zoned R1. The property north of that is part of the Settlers Pond Detention Area. It's all owned by the village of Tinley Park. We also are immediately adjacent to properties that are zoned in the Legacy District. That's where the dashed red line is, and that is zoned Neighborhood General. And then immediately east of the subject properties, and it's parcel 2 in this exhibit, are townhomes that are zoned R6. Across the street, we have more unincorporated property that's in the county, and that's zoned R3 in the county, but just to make sure everyone understands, every community has its own acronyms and nomenclature for zoning. So an R3 in the county is different than an R3 in the village. And it's recognized as single-family residential lot in a semi-urban environment, and that's what that stands for. So hopefully that puts some context in terms of where the property is located. Let's go to the next slide. As I mentioned back at the workshop, I thought it was important to understand we do have plans. Obviously, we have a comprehensive plan, although it's pretty dated, this back to 2020. But we also have the legacy plan that was adopted in 2009, and then later that transcended into the legacy code, which regulates the legacy planning area that was adopted in 2011. And as the previous slide showed, there is a parcel number 1, that is immediately contiguous to the legacy district. And the reason I bring that up is there were 2 areas in the legacy plan that address kind of this area and what future planning might look like in terms of a roadway network. In the top exhibit, you can see there's a red dashed line that extends from Oak Park Avenue and sort of jogs up close to Settlers Pond and ends up in Sayre Avenue. Well, the roadway framework plan, the whole point of that plan was to provide some future planning that would sort of fill in missing connections and provide an interconnection plan almost on the historic grid system that you see more in the downtown area. You'll see in that exhibit 178th Avenue actually was another proposal of extending, but if you know the community and you know that area, the likelihood of that happening is probably not very high. The other thing that's interesting, just a couple pages later from the roadway framework plan, is the proposed street framework plan. And that's that bottom graphic. And again, the yellow star is the area that we're talking about. And in this proposal, it's indicating an extension of 68 Court. And the reason I just wanted to put that forward is I wanted to make sure people didn't think we were just turning a blind eye to past planning, master planning documents. We actually took this project to our development review team, which is an interdepartmental meeting of our engineering department, public works, fire, building, police, and planning. We all get together every month or so. I think it's 6 weeks now. We get together and we review projects that have been proposed for the village. And this was proposed quite some time ago, and at that time I discussed with other staff members whether we wanted to adhere to either one of these plans. And the consensus of that, of the professionals and the staff members of that, is that all that was really this was doing was providing another connection between Sayre and Oak Park Avenue. It wasn't going any further west than that. And the context of the proposal that we have in front of us this evening is a fairly small development. It's just 2 buildings, and all an interconnection would have done in that case would have provided kind of a cut-through of traffic that would have gone through this maybe they would have, I mean, who knows, but people trying to avoid the intersection of Oak Park Avenue and 179th Street would have been able to cut through this small development and then head east on an extension of that road. So the consensus at that time was not to adhere to the plan. This was presented as a framework plan. I believe the chairman mentioned in his comments that he supported staff's recommendation not to follow those plans. So let's go to the next slide. And again, I'm just trying to show the context of where this parcel is. You'll see along the north property line of the 3 parcels, there's some existing vegetation, and then further north of that is the village's comprehensive stormwater system. There's single-family homes to the west, and then we have the townhomes to the east. Let's go to the next slide. And just to give us some understanding of how this development will lay out. As I mentioned, there are 2 buildings. A private street called Argos Court will run down the middle of it. And then off of that, the 2 buildings are fronting off of that. So what I think has been confusing to some is when you think of a driveway and the front door of a unit, you think that is the front yard of that building. But in actuality, by definition of the village's ordinance, we look at that whole parcel there that was 3 units and will now 3 parcels and will now be 1 parcel. The front of that lot is actually the portion of the property that fronts onto a public right-of-way, and that would be 179th Street. So as you can see on the exhibit, it says front yard. And then the side yards are just as labeled, and then the rear yard is along the north side. And the reason why that's important for our discussion is that is the nature of the variation request. So if by ordinance, they are required to have a 25-foot front yard and they're required to have a 30-foot rear yard, okay? But as you can see in that exhibit, that rear yard is less than that, and I'm trying to remember the numbers off my top of my head, but I think they range from 13.59 feet up to 15.12 feet. And typically, I would be concerned about that in terms of that's a significant variation. But in reality, the way that this property functions is the rear yards of the rear of these properties are on the 2 side yards, are on the east and the west property line. And those yards are actually exceeding the 30. They are actually 38 feet. So the way this proposal or the way the development has been designed, they are actually exceeding the setbacks of how the property functions. And why I think that's important is what was important to me in reviewing this is protecting the properties that are already developed on the east and west side. Those are existing homes, and it is the side of their properties because they both front 179th Street. So it is the side of of their properties that are next to the rear of these properties. So, and we'll discuss this a little bit more later in the landscaping section, but I had them put more landscaping than what is required, and also had them put a 6-foot solid fence, so that both of those properties on the east and the west side are very well buffered. And there's also a berm that wraps around the northwest and the northeast corner. So the only other aspects of the site plan, because when we do a site plan review, let's go to the next slide, there are certain standards that we look at. We certainly look at the arrangement of the buildings, making sure there's adequate parking and landscaping. The engineer makes sure that the drainage is working. We make sure there's safe movement of pedestrians. And one of the things we did alter on this plan is we are doing carriage walks along Argos Court, the private street. That way the driveways are actually longer, instead of being, usually you'll have a sidewalk that will leave you, 14 to 15 foot of green space next to the roadway. But what I didn't want to have happen is, because it's such a small development, and the driveways are close to each other, so there won't be really any off-street parking. I didn't want cars to always be overhanging the sidewalk and making the sidewalks impassable. So we requested, and the developer agreed to make those carriage walks. Also, with respect to pedestrian access, with the development of this property, this developer will take care of the improvements of 179th Street. Right now, there's a rural cross-section. So along the north side of 179th Street, which is immediately adjacent to this development, they will extend the road and get curbing there and get a public sidewalk and get street trees. So that's nice. It's going to, kind of finish off the road in that area. Okay, let's move on to the next slide and talk about landscape architecture. Hang on, I want to make sure. Actually, I failed to mention on that last slide where we are, I don't know, because this lags behind on YouTube here. Dan, if we go back to the site plan that has red with all the yards on it, I just wanted to highlight the basis for the variation request. So, as I mentioned, where it's noted there as rear yard, that's where the variation request is being made, because it doesn't meet the legal definition of what a rear yard is required. And I just wanted to point out, as in the previous slide, there will never be any development to the north of this property, and there's already existing vegetation there. So we felt that mitigated the variation request for a diminished rear yard setback. Okay. Sorry for forgetting to mention that. Let's move on to landscape architecture then. And this also kind of ties into the variation request. Not only does staff feel that the variation request is mitigated by the fact that there is existing vegetation north of this property, and it is owned by the village and it won't be developed, but in the buffer yard requirement, there's a certain level of planting that is required on the east, west, and north sides of this property. Staff recommended and the developer complied with the request to take some of the required planting, not all of it, because you can look on that plan and you can still see there's quite a bit of vegetation being proposed along the north property line. But I wanted to beef up the west and east sides as much as possible. We also wanted to make sure that we preserved those two large trees on the west side. So they do exceed landscape ordinance requirements for the east and west sides of this property. And in addition to that, we've requested and they've complied with putting up a 6-foot solid PVC fence, which has an attractive side on both sides of that fence. All right, let's move on to architecture. On this architecture slide, the top side is sort of where we began, and the bottom graphic is where we ended. And a couple of things that staff worked with the project architect is that, as we noted, these buildings are facing towards Argos Court. So what happens is they actually have a side of one of the units is facing 179th Street. And we wanted to make sure that it didn't, it activated that street face and didn't look like a side yard as much as a front of a building as much as possible. So the applicant agreed, and they wrapped a porch around that side. So there's a wraparound porch on both of those buildings on the 179th Street side. Has a metal roof. It's very cool, kind of modern looking. We also asked them to increase the depth of that porch. I think it's now 6 foot, so that it's actually a usable porch. We're going to see furniture sitting out there and people sitting out and kind of activating the street. So we thought that was an improvement on the architecture. We also had them raise the middle roof, the units, the 2 middle units. We looked for some variety in the roof lines to give some interest, so we don't have we don't have any monotonous architecture for the units. So I think at the end, a very nice architecture resulted from the project. If we go to the next slide, that's just sort of an elevation, again, showing how that wraparound porch extends along the whole side of the units that face 179th Street. And if we go to the next slide, we'll get a better idea of the building materials. In the old days, when we were all in the council chambers there, we passed these around. But I think they picked a very attractive palette of colors. This mystic blue and heritage gray complement the brown tones of the brick. So I think overall, it's going to be a very attractive development. So if we go to the next slide, you will see those are some of the things we look at when we look at the standards for architectural review. They did meet all the requirements of building materials regarding masonry, compatible architecture in terms of the context, the similarity with the townhome developments to the east, just as a defined entryway. And the mechanical units, those are all in the rear of the property units, immediately adjacent to the building, and they are placing 6-foot fences between each patio area. So each unit has sort of a private area of their own, screened from the next unit. So if we want to go to the next slide. With this development, as I mentioned, we're going to be annexing parcel 1 and 2. And that's just an illustration of the plan of annexation. And then the next slide shows how we combine those into a plan of subdivision that we call the Sunset Street subdivision. There'll be 13 lots. You'll have the 12 units, and then you'll have the common area. Will be lot 13. These have all been reviewed by the village engineer, and I am recommending, because there's always more engineering coming, that you condition your approval on final engineering approval. So I think that, Chairman, completes my report. I'd be glad to give the findings later when we're done with them.
Okay. This is Chairman Gray. Thanks, Paula. At this time, I will ask each of the commissioners if they have any comments or discussion for staff on any of the matters discussed. And I will begin with Commissioner Vick. Any comments?
I have no comments at this time, just that the staff looks like doing a really good job.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. Commissioner Aitchison.
I agree with Commissioner Vick. This is a very thorough report. Staff did a great job. I do want to say that I like the architecture on this. I think it's going to be a beautiful development, and the porch was a great addition to that.
Okay, excellent. Commissioner Lasciuto.
Just want to again echo what the other commissioners are saying, that the staff did a really good job with this report, and I agree that this project does look.
Okay, excellent. Commissioner Gaskell.
I have no comment.
Okay. Commissioner Gatto.
I agree with the other commissioners. Everything looks great. Staff did a great job on the design with landscaping and the fences, and I think it looks fantastic, and it'll be a great addition to that area.
Okay, excellent. Commissioner Manny.
Yes, I agree, this development's gonna be, it's gonna look nice. That's all my comments.
Okay, excellent. This is Chairman Gray. I echo with what the commissioners just said. And in regards to open item 2, the setback, as staff had discussed, the rear, it's a unique property, so the rear yard is not really your typical rear yard because it abuts Settler's Pond, which will never have a development behind it. So I think that open item 2 for the rear yard variation, I think it's totally reasonable in terms of that variation. And I do agree with some of the commissioners' comments on the architecture. It looks very tasteful. I like the tweaks or the improvements made with the wraparound porch. And I concur with staff that it is similar to those newer townhomes to the east. So overall, good job by the staff. And I appreciate the fact that the side yards are beefed up a little bit more than required in terms of the landscaping. I think it was a good idea to keep those trees, those 2 trees to the west as well. So with that, that completes my comments, and at this time I will ask if the petitioner has anything they would like to present or add on this item, and if so, I'll have to swear you in. But please first identify yourself and let us know if you intend to make comments.
Tom Panos, and I would like to thank Paula.
Can you repeat that?
Tom Panos, P-A-N-O-S.
Okay.
And,
Okay, Tom, okay.
From MAKP Properties. And I would like to thank Dan and Paula.
He's going to swear you in really quick, if you
Oh.
want to do that, Chairman.
Sorry about that.
Procedural
Yeah,
stuff with this.
Yes,
Is he at
so,
the microphone?
yeah, can you, Tom, can you please stand closer to the microphone? I'm having a hard time
Yes,
hearing,
yes.
especially with the mask on as well. So at this time, Tom, do you swear or affirm that the evidence that you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, excellent.
And yeah, I was saying that I would like to thank Paula and Dan for the hard work and the cooperation with us. And we worked together to put everything together with the improvements they did suggested. So I think it's going to be a nice addition to the area. So thank you, the commissioners too, for their time. Thank you.
Okay, this is Chairman Gray. Thank you, Tom, for your comments. At this time, I will ask if there's anyone from the public wishing to comment on this item. If so, please step up to the lectern and also write your name and address on the paper at the lectern, and I'll swear you in.
My name is Frank J. Zader, 17861 South Sayre.
Okay, Frank, if I can swear you in first, do you swear or affirm that the evidence that you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, it will be.
Okay, proceed.
Well, I think there needs to be some consideration put into for the neighborhood. 179th Street is a very dangerous road. There are more and more residents being built in the area. People are parking on the street. People drive very fast on that road. 50, 60 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone. I notice on the plan, the sidewalk stops at the property line, and I feel that that sidewalk should at least go down to Sayre Avenue. And really, the widening of the street is like 3 feet. So when people park on the street, farther down the road, they park on both sides of the street. But when people park on the street and these people are driving, 45, 50 miles an hour, it's hazardous. People have to dive into the ditch. They've been talking about putting in sidewalks on the street for 25 years. And it's never happened. It needs to be a consideration, and there also needs to be a four-way stop sign put into this plan. As far as the variance, it's all wetland. I'm not sure that that's going to make any difference. Nothing's going to be built back there. And the setback, I think it was 40 feet from the porch to the center of the street. It just doesn't seem that there's enough room for traffic the way things have been going in this area. So these are my consideration, things that I feel that need to be considered with more and more people getting there. With the coronavirus, more and more people are walking down the street. Kids walk down that street when they go to school. And
People driving in the ditches.
yeah, oh yeah, they pass you on, they pass you on the shoulder and go in the ditch when you back out of your driveway. Or they ride on your tail and they get out of the car at the stop sign at Oak Park Avenue. It's a very hazardous street. So these are things that really need to be looked at with more and more people coming into the area. Obviously, this is not the same contractor that is building the condos that are on the corner. I think this is a different, is it different? So, the plan looks fine. I don't really have any complaints about that. But these are things that definitely need to be in consideration before the plan moves forward. Should be some kind of traffic study. I've requested it from Cook County, and I've requested it from Tinley Park Police multiple times. And it's just something that needs to be looked at. That's all I have.
Okay, Frank, this is Chairman Gray. I appreciate your time and your comments. I concur that people should not be speeding. They shouldn't be going over the limit there, especially in any residential areas. I do walk past that on 179th Street. I walk on that on my way to Culver's sometimes. So I appreciate your comments.
So you
Yes,
understand what I'm
Mr.
talking
Little,
about
could
then,
you
right?
Please state your name.
No, this is Frank Zader still. So you understand what I'm talking about if you walk down 179th Street.
Well, I haven't experienced firsthand
No.
myself of a car barreling down on me. I usually will walk down past those new townhomes going west considerably, then I'll take a left and walk south towards Culver. So, but you live there, I just walk by it once in a while. So in terms of people speeding or driving erratically, I concur that shouldn't be happening at any
No.
residential area. People should follow the laws and the speed limits,
It
for
is-
sure.
It's really a pass-through from Harlem Avenue to Oak Park Avenue. And, and the police, village workers, cars passing through, everybody drives at least 40, 45 miles an hour. I think sidewalks should be a consideration. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak at this time?
Yes, Anthony Sullivan. I live adjacent to the property.
Okay, Ann. Okay, to the east or the west?
To the east, or west, I'm sorry. Wait. Yeah,
Okay.
west.
Anthony, if you could write your address also in your name into the, there should be a sheet of paper up on the
Yes,
lectern.
it was already done.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So, Anthony, do you swear or affirm that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, proceed.
I have a concern about the townhouses facing my home. Is there gonna be a deck or balcony at the ground level, or is it gonna be on the second level, like the other homes down the street?
It's on the first floor.
Okay,
It's on the ground floor.
okay, that was my question. I didn't see it in the plans.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Anthony. Paula, thank you for your answering Anthony's question. Are there any other people from the public wishing to comment on this item at this time? If so, please step up.
I just wanted to also mention, I completely agree with Frank. I work from home, and I have the Ring doorbell, so I see people that drive down the street, even drunk at 2 a.m, driving into the ditch. My garbage cans have been hit. It's a busy road. Normally, it's around 7:30, 8 in the morning, 5 o'clock, and right around 10 o'clock Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays. It's a heavy traffic area, and people are not really conscious of what's going on around them.
Okay, Anthony, thanks. As I said before, you guys live there, so you probably intimately know what goes on a day-to-day basis, especially if you have footage from your security. And I'm sorry to hear that, because people shouldn't be speeding down the roads. They should be obeying the limits. It sounds like this is an issue at this location. With that, is there anybody else from the public wishing to comment? Okay, seeing none on the screen and hearing none via the phone, I'm going to go back to our commissioners, and I will ask if they have any further discussion on this matter. I'll give 5 seconds for anybody to speak up of the commissioners. Hearing some of the public testimony, commissioners, are there any further discussion on this item?
This is Commissioner Gatto. I have to agree with them. That road has gotten very busy over the past 5 years. There's a lot of people that cut through from Harlem Avenue to Oak Park Avenue and don't obey the speed limit. I don't know if it's possible for us to see about doing a traffic study in that area, especially with adding those townhouses on the corner and then adding this additional development. It's going to bring more people to the area. I don't know, possibly maybe traffic study to see if we could put in a stop sign there, just to alleviate some of that speeding. My other question is, Paula, do you know, is it possible to extend that sidewalk out there?
Well, thank you. This is Paula, Commissioner Gatto. What I was going to mention is actually the neighborhood benefit as development occurs. I feel for these neighbors. Nobody wants to worry about their children or their pets with speeding vehicles, and we'll certainly make sure that the police is aware of this testimony. However, as you know, a lot of this area is still unincorporated, so it's out of our control. And there is a rural cross-section all the way down to 79th Street. But as with all development in the village, development pays as it goes. So you will not see these improvements to roadways until development occurs. And with each development, it sort of encourages other development in the area. My hope is that we'll see more annexation so that we can bring some of these areas under control with the village. I mean, there's always the option of a sidewalk being built and special assessments being placed on those properties. I'm not sure that's what these neighbors are really looking for. I also know that the Public Works Department has a master plan for extending sidewalks throughout the community where there's missing links. I don't know that plan off the top of my head, but I know it is something that they put into the CIP and look at every year where, let's say there's a block and there's one home that doesn't have a sidewalk, that they'll they'll go and do an infill on that. But this is a fairly long stretch of street along 179th Street, and I think Public Works, if you were to ask them, they would love to see this all improved. But the protocol for development is that we do make them pay their way, and so they will be paying for the frontage improvements on 179th Street. Regarding the stop signs, I mean, that's always quite a controversy on whether stop signs resolves the issue of speeding vehicles. Placing a cop car out there is probably one of the best ideas, but I'm not a police officer. I certainly will make sure they know of these complaints that we're hearing from the residents there, and certainly look into that. And I know I can speak with Laura Sanchez, who handles these kind of requests for stop signs and so forth, and see if there's ever been a study on this area.
Can I comment?
Perfect, thank you very much.
I'd like to comment on what you said. So the two properties that are on 179th Street,
Frank Zader speaking.
Yeah.
Okay.
this is Frank Zader, I'm sorry. The two properties on 179th Street to Sayre are both incorporated properties. The properties on the south side of 179th are unincorporated. So, I mean, I don't know.
Correct.
You know, there's not really gonna be too much more development unless they start to develop west of Sayre Avenue. And that property's been for sale for 20 years. So, I mean, it would be something that be nice people would look into.
Yeah. Paula, just to give a little bit of history on the roadway, at least too, from this, is it used to be under county jurisdiction for a long time. I think within the last maybe 10 to 20 years, the village took it over, mainly due to the county's lack of maintenance on the road. So the village kind of assumed some responsibility there because we wanted to make sure that road was maintained. At the same point, I think everybody would like sidewalks and to really have it built out like a traditional road would through there. But obviously there's cost to that. So we can definitely bring it up to our Public Works Department, kind of see where it's at on the list for them to kind of do those sidewalk gaps. I know they have that a little bit based on, you know, they try and attack where there's schools first and then where there's parks and then more heavily traveled. So they did parts of Harlem last year that had gaps on it. So this might be higher up on there because it kind of is a main connection point. And especially I think as you see more stuff happening, this is kind of a main kind of connection road there. So I'll just say the village kind of took the road on knowing it was not the best road because we want to at least make sure it was maintained. So some of this was because this was all kind of developed in the county and then came into the village afterwards. If this was originally all developed in the village, it would have been built with sidewalks and the full roadway. There'd be storm sewers out there. So some of it's just kind of the effects of the original development being in the county.
At one time, they were going to put in streetlights, so they have it's supposed to be streetlights and sidewalks. So they have the foundations for the streetlights on Sayre Avenue, but they never continued on. They've been that way for 10 years. So it was a plan at one time, but it keeps getting put on the back burner.
Yeah, and I can talk with Public Works to see if where it's at in the lineup. Obviously, at the end of the day, some of it comes down to money. We'd love to fill in every gap in the village, right? Personally, I think the sidewalk system is pretty bad. Just you try and walk around, there's gaps kind of wherever, and it's just some of it was older development didn't have sidewalks. Some of it was done in the county, and so you get these gaps. It's not the best system. I know Public Works has a pretty aggressive program, though, to try and fill those in. So, but at the end of the day, there's only so much money that can be allocated towards
Well,
it.
you
So
have Memorial
we'll see.
School on the other side of 179th Street.
Correct.
There are kids that
Yeah.
walk to school every day.
Yes.
Yeah, so it might be that, and that's a crosswalk right there too. For it. Yeah, so we can talk with them and kind of see where it falls on their list. And when they're kind of planning on working on it.
I had a comment also. This is Anthony Sullivan. The police do make their presence known through the neighborhood. They are driving through, but they're never at that intersection. They tend to do the radar closer to the church that's further down the street on the south side of 179th, closer to Harlem.
You never see anybody pull over. They see the car a mile away.
Yeah, they,
Yeah.
I've never seen anyone pulled over. I've been there 3 years, so.
Usually, the only time you see police presence is when there's a car accident at 179th and Sarah, which happens quite a few times a year.
Or they stopped up to see our lovely neighbors in the driveway
Oh, yeah.
with their Santa costumes.
Yeah. So really, the street is only gonna be widened 3 feet.
Yeah, it's just gonna be the one side of the
Right,
street
just one
that will, so at least that portion of it is being brought up to
So then
code.
you don't really have cars parked there, you don't really have enough room for 2 cars to go by at the same time.
Okay. We can, and maybe it's something we can ask our engineers, is if there's supposed to be either no parking signs, or maybe it's one side of the road and not the other. So we can see maybe there's I get what you're saying. I don't know if, on a rural crossroad, there's usually not even supposed to be on-street parking, so we
Right,
can.
if one of those people in the townhomes has a barbecue or a party, there's cars
Traffic jam.
parked all the way down the street. Even the parade, the St. Patrick's Day parade,
Sure.
the last few years, just cars everywhere. I couldn't even get off my driveway that day.
And then toward 179th Street with the new condos, there was the first set, Arnold Park, and the second, third set. There's cars that park there all day, all night. When people come around that corner, if there's another car parked there, they have to stop. I've seen nearly, accidents because of that congestion at that intersection.
Sure. We can bring it up to our engineers more for the roadway, and I think we all understand the concerns out there. I don't know if it directly relates to this development, but I do agree. We can have engineering look at sidewalks, the
Well,
roadway.
The reason we're bringing it up, you're gonna
and
have
the
people
parking.
moving in with children, they're gonna be riding their bikes and walking their
Yeah.
dogs down the street.
Yeah,
And the amount of traffic we have now, you're adding 12 units. So that could be 60 more people.
yeah. So, in the on-street parking side of it, we can look at too to see, that may have not been assessed when we basically took over the road. They probably just took it as whatever the county had up there. So we can talk with Public Works and our engineer to
It's
see.
been quite a long time now. It's probably been close to 25 years when Tinley Park took that property over.
Yeah.
That road.
Yeah, so maybe it wasn't assessed for the parking side of it, so we can ask them about that as well.
Okay, this is Chairman Gray. I just want to say, okay, thanks, Dan. It sounds like you and staff will follow up with engineering to look into that. Commissioner Gatto, I appreciate the comments. Is there any other commissioners at this time that have any other further comments or discussion or questions?
Commissioner Gaskill,
Okay,
how much of that 179th Street has sidewalks?
Just a portion where there's condos right now, or townhouses, whatever they are.
It basically ends right
Yes,
here.
this is Paula. All new development there, the Union Square development, and then the townhomes immediately adjacent. So there's sidewalks from Oak Park Avenue up to this point.
Up to basically Sayre.
And then there
Or-
is with the new memory care facility that's all the way on Ridgeland in 179. That had sidewalks put in when it was developed.
Right, when it was developed, right.
Yeah, so, but it's just really that corner because, and then between this development and there's no sidewalks.
So everything from Sayre to Harlem Avenue is nothing. There's nothing there.
No,
And that's all residential, correct?
There's a church in there, but there's the memory care
And the
place,
school.
church.
the church is on the south
north side of 179 all the way to Harlem is incorporated. Or was, I thought.
Yeah, well, it's pretty much all residential. Some is incorporated, some's not. But there's just the church, the memory care, a church, then single family that's mixed between them
Okay.
until it gets to here, then it's townhomes.
Okay, Commissioner Gaskell, are you?
Yes, I'm through.
satisfied with-
I'm through.
Okay. Okay. Any other commissioners have any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing no other further questions or discussion, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Commissioner Gaskill makes the motion.
This is Commissioner Lasciuto. I second that motion.
This is Chairman Gray. Motion made by Commissioner Gaskell, seconded by Commissioner Lasciuto. I will ask for a voice vote. Are there any opposed to this motion? Hearing none, the motion is carried. And staff, can you review the draft standards of approval at this time?
Yes, Chairman, this is Paula. We have quite a few standards to go through because of the various requests being made. Let me start with the rezoning approval. Our ordinance doesn't actually establish these standards. We refer to the LaSalle standards that have given some legal precedent in looking at rezoning. So they're summarized in your packet, but let me basically say that the point of the rezoning is to make sure that we're not diminishing any property values in the area because of that particular zoning. And the response that staff has provided you in terms of the draft standards is that the area is predominantly residential and that special attention was taken to make sure that there was adequate, if not exceeding ordinance requirements for buffers on both the east and west property lines of this development with respect to landscaping and a solid fence. There was also one of the standards about making sure that the rezoning of this property contributes to the overall health, safety, and welfare of the area. And just with what we were just talking about, with this improvement and development, we're going to see 179th Street be approved and an extension of the sidewalk on that north side. Another aspect or another standard looks at the suitability of the property for the zone purpose. And even though we have an antiquated comprehensive zone, it did provide for mixed use in this area, which includes residential uses, and as we mentioned, the area is predominantly residential. The property has been vacant for quite a long time under its current designation between the county and the village's R1. Therefore, it has shown a lack of development potential under its current zoning. And then one of the last standards was to make sure that the municipality of Tinley Park has adequately provided in its own planning and master plans for the development of this property. And as I mentioned in my staff report, through the legacy plan and the legacy code, as well as the comprehensive plan, staff addressed the vision and intent of each of those master plans. I'm going to move next to the variation standards. These are standards we're more used to. We don't do a lot of rezoning. State statute requires that we meet three standards. The first being that the property cannot yield a reasonable return if it's permitted to be used only under the conditions of the regulations in the district. The variation, as we discussed, was off of the rear yard setback. And I think the issue, as mentioned in my presentation, is that north yard, which as defined by ordinance as a rear yard, it actually functions as a side yard. And the fact that that area will not be developed and has existing vegetation certainly mitigates the impact of a diminished rear yard. The second standard is that the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances. And again, I'd say it's the orientation of the buildings and the way that the yards are described and the way they function. As mentioned, the yard, the rear yard that functions as a rear yard is actually the side yard, and we have made sure to increase the buffering of those areas as defined as side yards and functioning as rear yards have exceeded ordinance to make sure that we buffer against adjacent uses to the east and west. And the last being that if the variation is granted, it's not going to alter the essential character of the locality, and the setback is off the north property line where there is no immediate development to the north, and there will not be any development to the north in its existing vegetation. Let's go next to site plan approval. We did talk about this a little bit during the staff report in terms of the standards that we look at in reviewing a site plan. The first being that it is a permitted use in this district, and yes, in the R6 district, it does provide for single-family attached residential. And then, as we mentioned earlier, we look at off-street parking, the buildings, the lighting, the landscaping, and make sure that they're compatible with the neighborhood. I think one of the things that is noteworthy is that we are extending 179th Street and the public walk, so that addresses safe movement of pedestrians. And in the private street, we made for carriage walks, which also provides for better movement of pedestrians within the development. There's also a standard that talks about adequacy of the landscaping. As I mentioned, the buffer yards on the east and west side exceed the code. The next set of standards are architectural standards. It does meet the building material standards for masonry, and it also provides compatible architecture with the neighborhood, mentioning it's a two-story unit, has some variety and does not meet the monotony concerns of the ordinance, and that between the scale and massing of the project, it presents a very attractive architecture. I think one of the things that's noteworthy is we paid close attention to make sure that we activate the 179th Street streetscape by wrapping those south facades of both buildings with a wraparound porch. And then the mechanical units are all in the back, and they are screened from each unit as well as from the neighboring properties. And that concludes my standards, Chairman. Gray.
This is Chairman Gray. Thank you, Paula, for reviewing the draft standards for approval. There are 4 motions for this item. May I have the first motion for the rezoning map amendment approval?
This is Commissioner Aitchison. I make a motion to recommend that the village board grant the petitioner Maria Poulos on behalf of MAKP Properties, Inc. the rezoning of parcels 1 and 2 to R6 upon annexation and the rezoning of parcel 3 from R1 to R6 and adopt the findings of fact submitted by the petitioner and as proposed by the village staff in the staff report.
This is Commissioner Vick. I second that motion.
This is Chairman Gray. Motion made by Commissioner Aitchison, seconded by Commissioner Vick. Secretary, may I have a roll call?
Commissioner Vick,
Yes.
Commissioner Manning,
Yes.
Commissioner Gatto,
Yes.
Commissioner Gaskell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aitchison,
Yes.
Commissioner Loscuto,
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. Okay. This is Chairman Gray. The motion is carried. Commission, at this time, may I have a second motion for the variation?
This is Commissioner Gatto. I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the village board grant the petitioner Maria Poulos on behalf of MAKP Properties, Inc., a variation to the rear yard setback of 14.88 to 16.41 feet along the north property line, where the required minimum setback is 30 feet, to allow rear yard setbacks ranging from 13.59 feet to 15.12 feet in accordance with the plan submitted and listed herein and adopt findings of fact as proposed by the village staff in the staff report.
This is Commissioner Lasciuto. I second that motion.
This is Chairman Gray. Motion made by Commissioner Gatto, seconded by Commissioner Lasciuto. Secretary, may I have a roll call?
Commissioner Vick,
Yes.
Commissioner Manny,
Yes.
Commissioner Gatto,
Yes.
Commissioner Gaskell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aitchison,
Yes.
Commissioner Lasciuto,
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. This is Chairman Gray. The motion is carried. Commission, may I have a third motion for approval of the site and architecture plans?
This is Commissioner Gaskill. I make a motion to grant the petitioner Maria Paulos on behalf of MAKP Properties, Inc., site and architectural plan approval to construct two structures comprising 12 townhouses in accordance with the plans submitted and listed here and subject to final engineering approval.
This is Commissioner Lasciuto. I second that motion.
This is Chairman Gray. Motion made by Commissioner Gaskell, seconded by Commissioner Lasciuto. Secretary, may I have a roll call?
Commissioner Vick,
Yes.
Commissioner Manny,
Yes.
Commissioner Gatto,
Yes.
Commissioner Gaskell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aitchison,
Yes.
Commissioner Lasciuto,
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. This is Chairman Gray. The motion is carried. Commission, may I have a fourth motion for the final plat of subdivision?
This is Commissioner Aitchison. I make a motion to recommend that the village board grant final plat approval to the petitioner, Maria Poulos, on behalf of MAKP Properties, Inc., in accordance with the final plat of Sunset Estates subdivision, March 24th, 2021, subject to final engineering approval.
Commissioner Manny, second that motion.
This is Chairman Gray. Motion, Commissioner Aitchison, seconded by Commissioner Manny. Secretary, may I have a roll call?
Commissioner Vick,
Yes.
Commissioner Manny, Commissioner Manny, Eduardo,
Commissioner Manny, can you unmute yourself?
Unmute.
No, we lost him.
Yeah, I think we lost him.
I'd try it now, maybe that was him.
Commissioner Manny,
Yes.
Commissioner Gatto,
Yes.
Commissioner Gaskell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aitchison,
Yes.
Commissioner Lasciuto,
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. This is Chairman Gray. The motion is carried. So this is scheduled for the May 18th, 2021 Village Board meeting. So if the petitioner, Tom, if you're, please get with staff on how you can attend the Village Board meeting, whether in person or via telephone conference. Thanks again, and good luck with this project. At this time, I will move to the good of the order. Staff, do you have any comments for the good of the order?
This is Paula. Yes, Chairman, just a couple of quick things. Kathleen wanted to make sure we reminded everybody to turn in their ethics filing report. I think she's tracking that, correct, Kathleen? And we have a few commissioners that still have not filed.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so please do that. I think it's past the deadline though, isn't it even? I think it's-
Yeah.
Yeah,
So do you have any
and
questions on how to fill it out?
I've sent out reminder emails, and if, I believe the final deadline is in May, and then you have to pay a late fee, so, best to
Yeah.
get it done before you have to do that.
Is this is Commissioner LaShula, is this in regard to the statement of economic interest?
Yes, I
Yeah.
do not show you on the list. You must have
FBI.
done yours.
Yeah, no, I had already submitted it, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the apartment, the variation that Dan did at the last meeting for the variation, most of you were at that meeting. There were some concerns about the locks. I just wanted to report that the property owner, George, did have Goldilocks out there, I guess, and the locks did get fixed. Last night at the board meeting, the board approved an incentive for a restaurant in the Boulevard, so that's kind of exciting. That project, if you've been watching it, is moving right along. And so we have an Italian tapas restaurant that'll be going in there, and they expect to start construction or remodeling inside this June and want to be open by November and get the Christmas season. So that's excited. The Holiday Inn on North Creek Drive, I think that's where it is. It was a project of Dan's. They picked up their permit today. So there certainly is a lot of activity. And with that, we're very busy in the department. I mentioned that we've been doing interviews with the planner, and we did make an offer. So we're hoping to get a associate planner in to the department, hopefully in June. And with that, I'm going to be able to retire finally. My last day will be May 27th. And I'm sorry I'm not physically getting to see you. Maybe when things lighten up around here a little bit, I'll come to a commission meeting when you're all there. But I want to let you know that it's been a wonderful pleasure working with not only this group of commissioners, but I've seen quite a few commissioners come through the process. Chairman Gray, you are excellent chairman, and I've enjoyed working with you as well. This journey started out, I was just coming in to kind of help out Tinley Park for a couple months, and 6 years later, I'm still here. So I love this work. That's why I stayed, and it's been very rewarding. We've done some really good things. I'm very pleased that the staff we have in place now will be able to carry on and do an excellent job. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you all sometime in the future.
Well, Paul, this is Chairman Gray. I probably speak for, I'm going to speak for the commission here. We will miss you. You will be missed. And I always have appreciated, especially when I was new to the commission, some of the guidance packets and the reports that you prepared. I've always appreciated your thoroughness, so you would definitely be missed. Maybe you'll get bored and come out of retirement and join us for some of the Plan Commission meetings. You're always welcome, for sure. And you've been excellent since I've been a part of this.
Thank you.
With that, is there any public comments submitted or members of the public present wishing to speak today?
No, there wasn't.
Dan or Paula?
I'm going to take that you're choked up over me leaving, Sharon.
No, something went down the wrong pipe, and I literally, I'm not that emotional of a guy, but
What?
I'm trying to. But do we have any comments from the public?
No comments submitted.
No. Okay, excellent. At this time, then, if there's nothing further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Commissioner Gaskell, so moved.
This is Commissioner LaShula. Lashuda, I second that motion.
Okay, this is Chairman Gray. Motion made by Commissioner Gaskell, seconded by Commissioner Lashudo. I will take a voice vote. Anyone opposed?
Right.
Okay, hearing none, the motion is carried. The meeting is adjourned at 8:10 p.m. Good night, everybody.
Great job.
Night.
Great job.